Our sponsor for this hour is Neurodevelopmental Assessment and Consulting, LLC. Neurodevelopmental Assessment and Consulting, LLC is a private practice that provides evaluation, treatment, consultation, and therapy and counseling services with an emphasis on neurodevelopmental disorders and personal growth. The clinicians at their practice strongly believe in each person's ability to overcome challenges and reach their potential. Thank you, Neurodevelopmental Assessment and Consulting, for your support of DSDN.
Welcome back. We are at the top of our hour. It's 11 o'clock Central Time, in case you're paying attention. But actually, we have got some East Coasters with us this afternoon. So they're just hitting their noon hour. We are off to a wonderful, wonderful start this morning. Thanks again for joining us. I'm still Jen Jacob, co-founder and peer-to-peer fundraising director of DSDN. And we have a really important conversation coming up. Not that they all haven't been important, but last hour it was all about online support, which has been a huge, huge part of our mission. This hour, the other really big part of our mission. We believe since the beginning that every family who receives a new Down syndrome diagnosis should get accurate, unbiased, up-to-date information when they hear those words. And we are committed to helping equip medical professionals and medical providers with the tools and resources that they need to have those conversations with families every day. Every new diagnosis should accompany all of those things. And we have two of the people who've been instrumental in our medical outreach experts, or well, you're experts, in my opinion, in our medical outreach experiences since DSDN launched years and years ago. So we are so excited today to welcome Jenny Benedetto and Hannah Pascucci. And they're going to share a little bit about themselves. We would love for the audience, you guys have done a lot behind the scenes over the years and been incredibly involved, but people who are new to DSDN might not even know who you are. So will you take a few minutes and tell us a little bit about you and your family and how you've been involved with DSDN? Jenny, do you want to start? Oh my gosh. And I'm going to fact check you. I think you said 2010 was when Luca was born, but it was really 2012, right? I know you get a few kids, you can forget things, but I just want to note that because you literally have been with us.
Awesome.
Awesome. So wrapping up, Jenny has been here with us since the beginning. Luca was born in 2012 and a huge piece of the puzzle here for medical outreach. So we'll hear from you again in a few minutes. Hannah, can you introduce yourself and make sure you get that birth year right?
So I'm Hannah Pascucci. My daughter Juliana was born in 2015. And I had an NIPT that was part of our diagnosis journey. So we had a prenatal diagnosis and I actually found DSDN and joined one of the pregnancy groups. And that's how I ended up becoming part of DSDN. And I joined the medical outreach team in 2017, I believe, at the Chicago retreat, third retreat, my second retreat, was when I officially became part of medical outreach. And I have been part of medical outreach ever since. I live with my family in upstate New York. And when I am not the DSDN medical outreach director, I am a pediatric nurse practitioner at our local hospital. So that is part of my journey that I'm able to kind of see both sides. I have received a Down syndrome diagnosis and I actually have given a Down syndrome diagnosis to a family. So.
Fantastic. And Hannah is on the job right now today too. So if you hear anything fun hospital-wise going on, that's why. So,
yes.
We're just going with the flow today and live. So awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, I'm so thrilled to be chatting with you both today. Jenny, can you tell us a little bit about why the medical outreach programming has been such an important piece of our DSDN work and why it was so important to you to make sure that this goes well as we built this program?
Yeah, definitely. So medical outreach, really became an important part of where I felt DSDN could do some good when we received Luca's diagnosis. Like I said, it was a birth diagnosis. And so we had that experience and it was a lot to take in and a lot to process. And as I started to make more connections with other moms who had also recently received a diagnosis, it was really interesting since that was such a big part of our journey, right? We were at the beginning stages of it. It was often a topic of conversation. And so, when we would get together in chats or in virtual forums, right? That's often where the conversation went. Were you a birth diagnosis? Do you have a prenatal screen? How did you know? How did it go? And back in 2012 is around the time when a lot of the prenatal screens were coming into vogue. And so it was at a bit of a cusp, right? We were meeting more moms who had received a prenatal diagnosis, and then those of us who had received the birth diagnosis. And so the stories that women were sharing about their experience were still so widely varied. Some really felt supported and heard and had what they would call a very positive, diagnosis experience. And then there were others who shared, the things that were just frankly unbelievable that those things were being said to people, and it was really jarring to hear that. And then we did go to one of our first Down syndrome conferences together, and we met families there, women who'd had, their children 10, 20 years ago. And it was astonishing that so many of their experiences were very similar to what we were experiencing. And so, that was another kind of big aha moment for me, that this is a place where we could try to do some good in the world and really try to make a difference in focusing on improving that diagnosis experience for women. This was our way to try to kind of pick up the torch that those who'd gone before us had carried and try to continue to make progress. So that was really the spark for me to get really passionate about this with DSDN.
Gosh, Heather was chatting a little bit about those first experiences that we went to conferences, and you're just reminding me how those parents shared those diagnosis stories from decades ago, and it was still like it could have just happened yesterday, and the way they remembered the details and how they felt and all of that. Like, I just remember that so much too. So I'm really glad that you reminded us of how important that is. Oh, yeah. Oh, all the feels here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Hannah, you came in here too to really do some work and help us with things as we were kind of starting to build the program more and kind of knew more about what we thought we could do, and bring some of your expertise into this too. So tell me how we are working with our medical professionals. What are we doing to help them discuss this in the ways that we feel are the right way, with a balanced approach, up-to-date information, accurate, unbiased? How are we doing that at DSDN?
So the biggest thing that I think we are doing is we are coming at it with the approach of that every provider wants to do the best thing for their patient. I think that is universally been my experience as a provider, that every provider wants to do the right thing for their patient. And that oftentimes this is just a rare thing that they don't feel equipped to do well, as opposed to the fact that someone would intentionally be doing a bad job. When you think about it, it's pretty obvious. And so when you think about it that way, what it often comes to is that they just don't have the information and resources. And that's how we've truly always approached it, that if the providers had the information and resources about what the best way to give a diagnosis is, what are the available resources for families, if we make it easy for them to have that information, then when they know better, they'll do better. So that's always been our approach, is to try to get in front of as many providers in as many places and ways that we can to give them that information. Through either exhibiting at conferences and just talking to any person who will talk to us, to presenting at conferences, to doing webinars. I did one yesterday, to anyone, basically anyone who will take us, we go to try to talk about. We often have moms or dads on our team who are sharing their stories, and then sharing this was our experience. This is what was really helpful. This was what could have been improved. And just talking through that. And that's been the most powerful that I've found for our teams, is that when we talk about it as I, as the mom, was the patient, this was my patient experience. Because if we try to go in and tell the physicians how to do their job better, that nobody really usually receives that sort of thing well, of I'm not a physician, but I'm going to tell you how to do your job. And so instead it's more just, let me share my story as a patient. Let me tell you about my experience and what worked and what didn't work, so that when you know better, you can do better for your next patient. And that usually has been received almost universally really, really well by the providers that we've talked to. And often we also give them a safe space to ask questions. We know that you don't want to offend anybody. We promise that we won't be offended. Please ask all of your questions now so that we can help you have that information to feel more confident the next time this happens in your practice. Because while Down syndrome feels very common to us because we live in this world, to the average like obstetrics provider, they might see thousands of patients a year and see one that has a Down syndrome diagnosis. And so it's just not part of their everyday the way it is for us. And so having them have those resources easily available is always our key.
Yeah, just bringing that all to light. And I think about the time that we all traveled to the CREOG resident program for the OBGYNs. I think we were in Philadelphia or somewhere, Pittsburgh. I know it was somewhere that way. And having those conversations with the residents about what this looks like, and just taking them at every step of their professional journey too, to let them know that this is a safe place for us to have conversations with them and help them practice, because it isn't normal day-to-day stuff. And that awareness factor has been just huge for me. Gosh, we have had such a journey throughout this last decade with all of this. Thinking about that, what do you think is the progress that you've most seen with medical professionals over the years in what we're doing and how they're interacting with patients? Can you think of some experiences or times like that?
I'll share one, and I'm sure Hannah has more as well. I think the one I'm most excited about is DSDN being listed in the updated care guidelines, the health supervision guidelines from the American Academy of Pediatrics. They have those health supervision guidelines for children with Down syndrome, and that's sort of like the guidebook, right, for pediatricians who are caring for individuals with Down syndrome. It's wonderful on two parts. One is that we are listed as a resource, so for families who are receiving a prenatal or birth diagnosis, DSDN is listed as a support organization. So families can find us at the beginning of their journey, which is wonderful. So folks don't have to go searching for that level of support. And then the other thing that it makes me so happy when I see is they adjusted quite a bit of their language and their advice to the physician community around how the diagnosis should be delivered. And to Hannah's point, right, it's colleague to colleague, it's at that peer level that they're getting advice from their leading society and organization on here's best practices, and it involves delivering unbiased, fair and up-to-date information. So I can't even come up with the right word, right? Every word I'm thinking of just seems like it's not significant enough how absolutely huge that felt to see that come to be after the years of, yes, the CREOGs and the ACOGs and all the places that we went and all the doors we knocked on to just make it clear that we have this perspective we can share, we can help you be the best you, and that the fact that they listened, incorporated that, agreed, and disseminated that so broadly is just, it's awesome. And it really speaks to Hannah's point at the very beginning of this, that clinicians really do want to do what's best for their patients. They really genuinely do. And so it was wonderful to see that exchange result in, empowering clinicians to do better for their patients, that patient voice being heard in a more formal way. And, I just, that's the big moment for me that felt like, wow, we really did something here.
Oh my gosh, it gives me goosebumps to this day, honestly. Like, I mean, we're years after this has happened now, but all of the time and effort and hours and minutes and heart and energy that we put into that work, and collaborating with organizations and medical societies and professionals across all the scopes, and just that came to fruition. I still think, oh my gosh, we're listed in such a substantial document. There isn't enough words, and there isn't the right word, but freaking awesome, I would probably say, if I was saying it to someone that
okay,
doesn't
we'll go
know.
with that.
Yeah, freaking awesome. What about you, Hannah? Anything else that you're thinking about too? I know you obviously consider that significant.
Yes. Yep. I still remember the day you called me when those came out. But I think for me, what's always exciting is anytime we get that a provider sent somebody to us. Because to me, it even gives that whole back history of, that obviously they somehow heard about us, whether it was through one of our medical outreach teams at a conference or through a local org sharing our information or whatever. But obviously our medical outreach through the Down syndrome community probably reached them in some way. And so to now start seeing the fruit of the years that we've been doing this and having these conversations and raising this topic and trying to elevate the discussions among the medical community about how these diagnoses are being delivered, it's just always exciting to me. The one that I remember is when we were at the Association for Women's Health, Obstetric and Neonatal Nursing, which is a long name, it's AWON, and they have a lot of midwives that are at their conference. And the president of AWON was a midwife, practicing midwife, who came by our booth and was like, we started to talk to her about our organization. And she was like, oh no, I know about you guys. I have your stuff in my office. And so for me, that was so special to know that this midwife who was in a powerful position knew who we were. We didn't even have to tell her, and she was already sharing our information in her daily practice. Was really exciting for me because that was one of the first times I talked to a provider who was like, you don't need to tell me about you, I already know. And ever since then, as we have more moms join our groups who say that they either got our information from their physician, from their genetic counselor, whoever it was, every single time, it's still exciting for me that we are no longer having to go word of mouth, mom to mom, but that providers are sending their patients to us.
Yeah. So incredible. I mean, truly the ways that I consider you guys unsung heroes in our organization because you have done so much behind the scenes for so many years. And I think about all of those conferences and events that we went to. I mean, I think of 2019 alone. I think we went to like 10 different conferences across the country that year or something.
I think it was 12. It was 12 that year before. And we were planning on doing another 12 before medical
craziness. Yeah.
The medical world shifted significantly.
Yes. Yeah. Which, has been, it's been a roller coaster, but I mean, all of the significant work and all of those hours and minutes are what led to being in the position that we're in now, that people know about us, people, understand what we do, people are sharing about our work, so that way other parents can get that paid forward to them. So I just appreciate you both so much for the leadership that you've shown in these areas over the years, because it's been it's truly incredible. I do still get that moment of, oh my gosh, we did that. Like we did that. Our families together, people who funded us to do the things, because we know medical outreach is not a cheap category to fund. And in fact, I just got a message here that we're funding each of our different budget areas through the day today is what our goal is. And so once we finish an area, we're moving on to the next one. I just got a message that we fully funded the rest of Rockin Family Fund for the year. And now we are moving on to medical outreach this hour because that's where we're at. So I know it costs so much money to go to those conferences and to just do the exhibit booths and see things, because they're used to industry money and things. And so little cute nonprofits like us, we're still paying a lot of the same prices for everything, and having our families then travel there and parents travel there to share their stories, so that way those providers can hear from our hearts what this looks like and hear about our information and what that looks like. So we hope that at some point everything will be back on track too, that conferences look the same as maybe they did a few years ago, so we can keep really spreading our information and sharing our story. But we need that money there to make sure that we can fund it, so that way it keeps going and people continue to have better experiences because of the work that we've all put in, and people before us for years and years too. Like Jenny said, we're just trying to keep that work going and picking up the torches as they go. Any last thoughts before we head on to our next segment, ladies?
I would just say, a thank you to all the moms and dads who did all the heavy lifting before we showed up on the scene, and who were so welcoming to us as an organization, and, taught us all they had learned in the process of building out all of their medical outreach. I think that the collaboration that's come to bear with multiple Down syndrome organizations has been amazing. I know medical outreach is one of those places that a lot of local organizations really do work around to improve that experience in their local area. And we love that. And I think our efforts to focus on that national level to ensure the community has a voice there. It doesn't happen with just us doing this, right? There's teams of folks who volunteer to be part of the outreach team, to get out to these meetings. And it really does, like you said, Jen, take a village. And it was a village that was here before us. We're so fortunate to continue to carry the torch on that. Hannah and her team are doing amazing work in this space to continue keeping our voices out there. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who's ever touched anything related to medical outreach, either formally or informally, because it's just keeping top of mind and making sure that these clinicians know we're here and can help them make a difference. It's huge. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with Jenny. Like I always say that the reason we are able to do what we do is because when I talk to these providers at a conference and I tell them to make sure to offer resources and support, I'm not usually just offering DSDN, I'm offering the local org. And so the fact that all of these local orgs are out there doing amazing work for the local physicians to refer to is huge, and we would not be able to do what we did and what we're continuing to do if there weren't local orgs to pick up where we leave off. And then also just a huge thank you to anyone who has ever served on the medical outreach team. There's, many, many people who over the years have left their families, which we all know when you have a kid with some extra needs is a big deal, to fly to random places and talk to strangers all day long, sharing a very personal story. Like it is not a small ask that I make of the people on my medical outreach team. And I just so appreciate every single one of them who is willing to just dive into this very surreal experience, standing at a table, awkwardly talking to people about a very personal thing for hours on end. Like it's huge and it makes a huge difference, but it is not a small ask. And so whether it's the DSDN fundraisers who are helping raise the money for these, or the people who are actually out there having the awkward conversations, like this has been a huge thing over the years that we've accomplished. And I'm so excited to see where we go next.
Oh my, and next, we're going to make sure that we get all of the monies that you guys need to keep going with this support and keep going on the right path and just continue for the Down syndrome community doing the work that we're doing to help us greater as a whole. But thank you ladies so much for joining us today and just for everything that you do. I appreciate you both and just love ya. So thanks.
Boy, how has DSDN impacted me? Obviously, I found DSDN pre-diagnosis in our birth, and it was a huge resource. It was huge for getting us through the unknown and navigating a lot of things that we weren't expecting or even petrified for. Really, though, it all started to click, and DSDN changed my life on my first Rockin' Dad retreat. It was in Nashville, and I remember not being excited to go. I've never been one to want to travel across the country to meet 70 strangers, but I'm glad I did. It took about 20 seconds to form just lifelong relationships that to this day, a few years later, that I'm still carrying with me, that I talk to every day. It's incredible. It's incredible the message that DSDN has sent and how it has brought this group of the lucky few together. And I will spend the rest of my life trying to spread that message with them. And I'll be forever grateful for DSDN. Thanks a lot, guys.
Hi everyone, this is Livia Allen, the Medical Outreach Coordinator. I just wanted to extend my deepest gratitude for each and every one of you that's on the Medical Outreach team. I have worked with several of you personally, and I can see how valuable this work is, which is something that really makes me want to work with each and every one of you continually to help improve the mission of DSDN. You guys are doing very valuable work, and I appreciate every single one of you. I've loved working with all of you, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for all that you do for DSDN.